having your father as a dad, right? But also as a coach, being a player. Tell me a little bit about that.
I mean, I love it.
Yeah.
So I was just telling him how you flunked out of high school and we didn't have a choice but for you to play pickleball.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
Exactly. He was like,
Fully flunked.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm Riley Bohnert.
Okay.
I am 19, soon to be 20. Started playing pickleball around the age of 16. Greatest fear is that like I will let my family down.
well, let me tell you how it's going.
Yeah.
She's not failing.
No,
She's down
trust me, I
here.
know.
She's on her own. She's making her own way. We're very, very proud of where she is and couldn't be more excited to see what the next year brings for her. And so that fear of failure as a parent is overwhelming, and it's 24/7. But something, I don't know if this makes sense to everybody, but for me, I came up with a line a long time ago that the better parent I am, the better kids I have.
Yeah.
But then it was a few years ago I realized I'm a good parent because I've got really good kids.
Do you want to come and join us?
So
Okay.
I was just telling him how you flunked out of high school and we didn't have a choice but for you to play pickleball.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
Exactly. He was like, there was no other option.
Fully flunked.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm Riley Bohnert.
Okay.
I am 19, soon to be 20.
Okay.
I started playing pickleball around the age of 16, and here I am now.
So I got a question for you.
Okay.
He said that you turned to him and were like, hey, I don't want to go to college,
Yes.
but I want to pursue pickleball on a professional level.
Yes.
What made you make that decision, and how did you go about actually telling him? Because it's not an easy thing to tell your parent, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
I think, was it New York with Emily where I got bronze? And then I came back. I met, it was a blind date.
Okay.
I've never met this person before. Her name is Emily Ackerman, and she's now one of my best friends on tour. And we met in New York, and we ended up getting bronze together. And that was my second pro medal, but kind of my first real pro medal.
Yeah.
And then I went back, and I was still like in high school, like I was a senior, and I got accepted to college. But I just had so much fun that weekend that I was like, I had originally been going back and forth between like college and pickleball, and I was just like, I gotta do this now. Like, I gotta do it. And so it was a tough decision because like obviously like as a parent, you want your kids to go to college, do the normal path and find a career. But I had always not felt different than everyone else, but just felt like I could do different things. And I just went up to them and had a conversation. I was just like, I think I really want to do it.
And then you, Dad, said that you set some terms for her. Because as I just related, so giving you a little bit about my background too, that we started with, is, so I was an engineer for 5 years, and then I had to turn to my parents and be like, I'm not using the degree. Obviously, there's a little bit of pushback there, right? You have a good paying salary, you have a good job, and they're like, you're going to go risk this all in starting a business?
Yeah.
So with it being said, from a parent standpoint, it's just like you want that safety, security, that financial support for any kid. So I really wanted to know, and you can emphasize again, like what did those terms look like when you turned to her and said, if you're going to do this, here's how it needs to be done?
yeah, before I get to the terms, I'll tell you what my wife and I talked about, and my wife said it best. And this was it. You know, as a parent, we have 3 daughters. She has 2 other very amazing, beautiful, talented sisters. It took me 18 years, I guess, almost 17 years to really realize that cliche of you just want your kids to be happy and healthy is true. And it was really in that moment and in those discussions that we knew this is what was going to make Riley the happiest. And so it really, when my wife and I talked about it and my wife put it that way, college was off the table for us, right? Like she'd made the decision, but that's what made it clear to me and my wife that she needs to go do this because it makes her happy. The terms were, you know, if your kid's not going to college, even if they are going to college, right? Like there's a lot of downtime, there's a lot of free time. So, you know, you can't just sit in bed till noon, right? You can't go out all night long. Not that she was partying much back then, but, you know, you got to have some structure to your day. You got to have a work ethic. And she showed us that, right? And I think that her work ethic, you know, really she's always worked hard at all her sports, but she just loves pickleball. It just makes her happy.
I get that. Listen, because when I started playing, I was addicted. So I probably started playing 2022 was my first step on the court. And like anybody else, it was kind of like, hey, my parents were playing. And they were like, do you want to come play pickleball? And I was like, I don't know what that silly game is, but let me go play. Yeah. And then you fall in love with it. You play it, you fall in love with it. And then for me, a little piece of that relating is I played high-level hockey, and I knew I just didn't apply myself. And I actually, the reason that I started the whole project was because of my fear of failure. And when I became aware of my skills, I just crumbled under all the expectations that I set of myself. Meaning, like, now that people are telling me that I'm the guy, I need to go score 3 goals a game, right? I need to carry the team, I need to do this, I need to do this. And before you know it, you're in your own head, you can't get out of it, and now you're performing way under where you could be because you're thinking about every little thing that you do. So the reason that I wanted to key in on that is because I can imagine having your father on the sidelines, as we just watched, supporting you the entire time, knowing that he's bought into you doing this, has to be so fulfilling in a manner, right? Because you know no matter what happens, meaning what the outcome is, he's still going to support you when you step on the court, right? It's still getting up the next day and being like, this is our career, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about what it's like not only having your father as a dad, right, but also as a coach, being a player. Tell me a little bit about that.
I mean, I love it.
Yeah.
I love telling people he's my coach. I don't know if he likes it very much, but I like it. But I just think, like, my whole life, like, he has always been he's always been a coach, like, through almost every sport. Like, he was actually my basketball coach for 1 year.
That was fun.
That was fun. Yeah. He was always, like, it was just so cool. Like, after, like, almost every game, I would look forward to getting in the car with him and then having a discussion about the sport or what just happened in the game. And I just loved it. And, like, obviously, like, sometimes there's some yelling and some crying, but that's what, like, has made me so, I guess, disciplined. Like, I really appreciate everything that he said to me, even if I've yelled back at him. I love him pushing me so much. And it really, like, it helps me a lot, especially on the court.
I think pickleball is unique, right? Because we can play alongside each other at the same tournaments. So that was also a benefit, right? And, you know, maybe the only thing we miss about COVID is that there wasn't anything else going on, and my wife and I could travel to pickleball tournaments. And so, you know, we realized we made it a point a couple of years ago that, okay, I'm going to go to the first 5 or 6 tournaments of the year with Riley, but if she's going to do this, she has to learn to do it on her own. Yeah. And so I stopped traveling to the tournaments. So that's the fun part, right, is that I do get to be there a lot, and I can compete myself and then come off the court and coach her, or I'm really lucky when she can come coach me. Yeah. So it's been fun to do it together, and we've had a lot of fun. We used to do these videos on our way to the tournament. I'd be driving, and she'd have the camera up, and we'd have a song that we were blaring, and we'd play the reels, and we got a lot of attention and likes for that. So I think being able to compete alongside each other has been fun. And I think that there's no question in the beginning she was definitely learning from us, meaning my wife is a really good player as well. We're learning more from her these days. She's surpassed her mom and dad on the courts.
How about so it's easy for a lot of not only teammates, but even like sibling dynamics, or let's say in your case, it's father-daughter. When everything's going well, it's much easier to navigate those scenarios. How have you gone about figuring out navigating the emotional lows, right? Because there's a lot of emotion attached to that. You're working really hard day in and day out. How have you found, from a coach standpoint now and father, to handle or even go about communicating with her when she's...
So, you know, God blessed me with 3 daughters. Yeah. And so I've learned over the years that basically when this one, I guess, turned 13 or so, that there was nothing I could say, right? All I could do is give her a hug. There was nothing I could say. And so we had a moment yesterday, although brief and not that contentious, to where I knew I just had to give her her space. And it was interesting because I'm very competitive. And yesterday, though, it hit me that just, you know what? Just stand at a distance. She knows how to do this. Let her do her thing. But we've had ups and downs too, because we've played together, right? When she got started, You know, we played a lot of tournaments together, and we had so much fun. She's the comeback kid. I don't know how long you want to go, but I could tell you the stories of being down, you know, 11-2, 9-2, and her looking me in the eye and saying, Dad, I really want this. I'm like, no, Riley, I know, I do too. She goes, no, Dad, I really want this. And it hit me that,
This is when you guys are playing together.
Playing together. And this is when she's just getting started. It's a 4-5-5-0 round robin in Lexington, Kentucky. Yeah. And I looked at her and I'm just like, there's nothing I can do. I'm going to stay out of her way on the court. Yeah. And she took over. And it was a blast. We came back, we won 11-9 and 12-10. And then in New York, in a really stacked 5-0 field, right before she turned pro, we had an amazing comeback and ended up winning gold. And so the good times definitely outweigh the tough times.
Did you feel like you always had that mindset when you were behind to power through and really say, you know what, I want this. I'm going to find a way to fight back? Because I feel like a lot of players will flounder or even like freeze or fawn away from that big moment. Yeah. It seems like he keyed in on like, you're always the one to lean right into it. Like, how can I come back from this?
I love it. I mean, obviously nobody likes being down, but like it never makes me nervous. It's actually more exciting for me because it's just like the game's never over. You always have to fight. And I think like just him drilling that into my mind my whole life, like never give up, like keep fighting always. And it's just like a lot of times like when he doesn't come to tournaments, like his voice will play in my head and he'll literally just say like fight, never give up, and it will just play over and over in my head. And it's just I don't prefer being down obviously, but it excites me sometimes. Yeah. The
reason I asked that question is because so what we've talked about heavily to kind of like give you a little bit of background. We talk about that being like a key moment for athletes to navigate, meaning being behind towards the end of a game. Mm-hmm. Also, one is starting a game. Also, one is like off your first miss. How are you responding? Mm-hmm. So the reason that I asked you about it is because it seems like it started with Dad on how do you navigate those toughest moments in a game? Mm-hmm. Because ultimately, the best athletes are not the ones that can find a way to win when they're 100%. It's finding a way to win when you're 80% or you're behind by 5-6 points and finding a way to get there. So I respect that you have that mindset heavily, especially at the age that you are.
I think something's really important, and we're here at a Next Gen tournament, right? Yeah. And so Riley's had a lot of success at these Next Gens over the years and a lot of fun. And so I'll get a lot of parents asking me about it. Everybody can go about it differently in their own way, but where that comes from is Riley learned to win at every level. We made her do that. I remember being at the U.S. Open and her asking me, Dad, when can I play pro? When can I play pro? And it was real simple. When you win multiple 5-0 tournaments in a row. She won 7 out of her next 8 and got silver in the one she didn't win. So I didn't have a choice but to let her. That goes back to this little girl. She's 6 years old, and Dad, believe it or not, once upon a time was doing triathlons. She's like, I want to do a triathlon. I'm like, what do you mean? And she just wanted to go for a bike ride with Dad, right? Well, she wouldn't leave me alone, so we found a junior triathlon, 9 and under. She was 6, and we weren't really sure if we wanted her to do it. We didn't know anything about it, right? And she, who knows if she can do it or not. And Riley could tie her shoes, but she wouldn't. And so the week of the triathlon,
I'm stubborn.
She says, Dad, did you sign me up for the triathlon? And I sat her down, I got down low, and I looked her in the eye, and I said, Riley, I said, I'm sorry, honey, but you have to be able to tie your shoes by yourself in the transition area, or they won't let you do the triathlon. Came home that day from work. Dad, watch this. Well, who taught you how to do that, Riley? Nobody. Can I do the triathlon now? So she did the triathlon, 6 years old. And she went on, we as a family did triathlons for 4 summers in a row. And she was the inspiration for her 2 younger sisters and her 18-year-old sister now, Tatum, followed in her footsteps. And they won dozens of junior triathlons the next 4 summers. And I think that triathlon experience at a young age, in addition to they were all good swimmers, I think that built up so much self-confidence in them that they could do anything.
Just like knowing that, I always reference it to like losses, right? like the more you lose, the more you learn, the more you find a way to actually win and overcome failure, our narrative, right? And it sounds like they started that very young on saying, you know what, if I want to go do this, not only do I need to somehow do it myself or figure out a way to do it, but it's when I don't have success, how do I now find it, right? And that is super, super cool and super key.
I also, like, back to the triathlons, like, I also, like, when I'm in, like, a tough moment, like in pickleball or something, I have always had a horrible fear of lakes for some reason.
Okay.
I absolutely, like, I love the ocean, hate lakes. But there was a national triathlon that my sister did, and I was so jealous. I was like, I don't want to do this, but you had to swim in a lake. And so I was like, Dad, sign me up. I'm going to do it. Like, someone's going to have to push me, or I'm just going to do it. And so I did it, and I jumped in that lake. Now, I didn't swim with my head down. I swam with my head up. But I did it. And so I always, like, whenever I'm in a tough moment, I'm like, if you can swim in a lake when you're, like, 10 years old and you're petrified, you can literally do anything you want.
I love that fear reference. I do. However, it sounded like it came from a little bit of competition with the sisters, right?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, like, she did it once, and I was like, that's really cool. Like, it's a national triathlon thing. And so then I was like, well, I can do that. Like, let's go, so I can do it. Yeah.
She still dominated the swim, even with her head out of water.
I couldn't do it.
Doggy paddling?
No, I swam normally, just with my head up.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Transitioning a little bit because I want to ask you guys about Next Gen as a whole. Because honestly, Ken gave us the opportunity to kind of be here and do a lot of these interviews. So what we're really doing is trying to key on like all the pieces that have pulled together a really good and tremendous APP product on this half. And you're involved in Next Gen, and you're involved with it alongside of her. What made you guys choose this as the path for her to actually take to put her at the best position now moving into the pro?
You know, we were concerned at first when this thing got started, like, you know, does she belong, right? And then we realized that there's a lot of kids her age, and there's nothing more important than that, right? It's hard. You know, she's one of, 4 or 5, maybe there's 10 or 12 of them now that are, teenage girls trying to play pro pickleball. We know that one of them has had a lot more success than the rest of them, but that's hard, to go out there in that adult world when you're really just getting started. And so, I think for Next Gen, it was, okay, go there, be with your peers, see where you stack, but really, it's the only place that these kids get to play with other kids, because that'll change very quickly, as we know, but at your local park, it's, older folks, it's getting younger, we know that, but, so for her to go to a tournament and just see all of these people her age, I mean, I'll let her describe what it, felt like for her, but for me, it was like, okay, this is fun. And I have told Ken Herman and anybody that'll listen since the first Next Gen we went to, Next Gen is the coolest thing in pickleball. There's nothing else like it.
This event is awesome.
Yeah.
Following is awesome. So building on the awesomeness of this event, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about your experience as a player.
So I mean, obviously, like when I was first starting, it was nerve-wracking coming in because like it's always been easier for me to talk to adults than it is to connect with people my age. But coming to Next Gen, I just like, it felt like a second family, honestly. And so I tell everyone that coming to Next Gen, I feel like I'm home, feel like I'm with my family. Like, yes, they're my friends, but they're also like, I feel like just if I ever need someone, like Next Gen is where I can make those connections. And I've made my best friends at Next Gen. And they're just, it's just a lot of fun. Like, I don't know how else to put it than use the word fun. But it's really cool because you just get to play along the side of people your own age. And it's also like the competitiveness is really cool.
The name is really fitting, by the way, because over the 2.5 years that she's been playing, you can see the future of pickleball happening right in front of your eye. Mm-hmm. These kids, right, they have unlimited imagination, and the shots they try at such a young age, right? But it also means something different to everybody here, right? There are a handful of girls and a handful of guys that are competing for the good prize money that they offer at these events. And everybody's here to be competitive, but a lot of people, it is just about that, finding other people your age, your same age, that are enjoying this sport. And so when she uses the word, family, I mean, there's no question that that's the feeling with all these kids. I mean, we've seen it over the years where, people are cheering for the underdog. We used to love that. We don't love that so much anymore.
Yeah.
But
No.
but we get it, right?
Yeah.
And it's still like she's never come off the court and been like, that's what we do. We cheer for one person and then the match is over and we love everybody here. So it's been great.
You can see that too, because like being like the outside looking in guy here this weekend, it's like so many of you guys are having fun off the court, in between matches. You can see the camaraderie between you all, that you guys have established really good relationships. I was just talking to Jack, Richard, and Eric, and they're like the three biggest, honestly, goobers together.
One of them is a bigger goober than the other.
Yeah.
I'll let you figure out which one.
Yeah.
But I was like, you guys are goofballs. But either way, you can see that all of you guys having a great time out there, really. 2 closing questions we have on pretty much everything that we do. The first one, and I'll start with you, is it could be pickleball related, it could be life related, but what is one failure that you had that you're now thankful for today?
Oh.
You give a second to think about it. No rush. And now you can warm up for your question as well. But I'm sure there's a whole slew of them, right?
Yeah.
There's probably a whole library of them, but one that may come to mind that you're like, hey, that was kind of like I learned something pretty tremendous from there. Yours, as you probably already gave it, was jumping in that lake.
Yeah. Yeah, but I wouldn't say like it was a failure of mine because I ended up doing
More
it.
of a fear.
Yeah, definitely a fear. I don't know if it's a failure, but when I definitely learned something from it. Like when I was in high school, I became really, really sad.
Yeah.
And I had to figure out a way to make myself happy again. And I failed at missing out on a lot of things in high school. I failed at sometimes being a good older sister, being a good daughter. But I learned from it and I became stronger from it.
Yeah.
So I would say that was a big one.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I appreciate you sharing that because I think, and the reason we describe them as failures, to give you like more about the whole narrative, is we're trying to employ it more as a positive thing than a negative thing. Like we've seen interacting with kids in pickleball, so we're from Connecticut, so talking with them of like, now when we talk about failure and they have a miss, they're like, oh, I failed again, right? They're kind of laughing about it and giggling about it. So you sharing that is going to be awesome for other people to kind of listen in and be like, hey, I could also do this too, right?
Yeah.
I could also jump in that lake,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dad, do you also have one that you're thinking of?
Well, while we're sitting here, this runs through my mind all the time, and I don't know that I've shared it with the family.
Yeah.
I failed as either a coach and or dad with her at a young age. Yeah. I had, come from a background, high level tennis, had been, an okay college player and then a successful tennis coach after college. So I thought I knew everything about coaching. And it took me a lot of years with her to realize that everybody is different. And, I grew up, at an all boys Catholic school where you were coached one way and it was get in line and do this or do that. And I definitely failed, and hopefully she doesn't remember, when she was, getting started at a very young age and, pee-wee soccer and having too high of expectations of her and things like that. And over the years, what I learned, particularly about Riley, is that if it's fun, she's going to succeed. And if I can dial it back a notch and just let her have fun, right? And she reminded me this morning, I might have been a little, and I wasn't, by the way. But we see things differently, right? Yeah. And so I think that learning that, and I'm not sure when that happened, but I know that it happened, and it's something I think about a lot because all 3 of my girls are different. Yeah. And her 2 sisters are very successful, athletes as well. And so, I try to focus on, okay, what's the communication that's going to work for them? And that just makes sense. But it wasn't how I was trained. It wasn't how I grew up, right? So There's no manual for being a parent, right? We learn on the job, and we stub our toe along the way, and fortunately, some things turn out better than others.
Hell yeah. And I think that translates to all parts of life, like you just talked about. How you communicate with people, partners on the court. It's more about learning who that person is, how they respond, what they respond well to, what they don't respond well to, and then learning and iterating from it, right?
Yeah.
So I give you a lot of credit of truly understanding the uniqueness of not only your daughters, but each individual, and having to separate how you really go about talking with those people. So our last closing question, and you could have fun with this one if you want to, but I'll start with you, Dad.
Yeah.
What is your greatest fear moving forward?
With me or with her?
It could be either or. It could be with her. It could be with you. Just one that still sits with you that you choose to navigate today rather than running away from it.
Oh, I don't know that it's one thing. I mean, listen. Just as a parent, you never stop worrying, right? And we have a lot of things in our house to be very excited about and very happy about, very proud of. But you still worry about that future, right? You know, in her case, pickleball's still new, right? Are we making the right choices along the way, right? And it's not just about, whether she's winning a medal or making money or not. It's, I always tell Ken, like when I ask Ken how Riley's doing, and he'll say, well, I think she's playing great. And I'll have to remind him, Ken, I'm more concerned about her as a person than I am the player. And it's no different with her sisters. And so that fear of failure as a parent is overwhelming, and it's 24/7. But something, I don't know if this makes sense to everybody, but for me, I came up with a line a long time ago that the better parent I am, the better kids I have. Yeah. But then it was a few years ago I realized I'm a good parent because I've got really good kids.
There you go. So you've recognized through that mindset shift that you've put in the work. You've now realized you're a good parent because all three of your daughters are amazing.
Yeah.
And you could not be more thankful for it.
No question.
I love that. You, Riley, now.
Yeah.
It could be aligned with pickleball. It doesn't have to be. It could be aligned with life. But what is your greatest fear now, moving forward, in this life that you've now chosen involved in pickleball?
Well, so I actually just decided to move down to Florida.
Okay.
To pursue pickleball. And so obviously my greatest fear is that I will let my family down for moving and disappointing my parents, and that I'll have to move back home, that pickleball doesn't work out, that I have to go back to college, that there's not enough money. But I have it's actually his saying, every little thing is going to be all right. Yeah. And so I actually...
Little Bob Marley.
Yeah. So I tell myself that almost every day when I start freaking out about that stuff. But I try not to think about that, but that's definitely my greatest fear.
I can relate to you so heavily, beyond what you know. And I think a lot of people sit in that seat. It's because no matter what, you want to make your parents proud, right? Mm-hmm. And so when it was for me separating myself from my engineering job to now pursuing a podcast, a project as a whole geared around failure, it was like the last thing that I wanted to do was to let them down, right? But ultimately how I had to reflect is like when I'm 85, right, and I'm on my deathbed, and I'm like, how did I spend my life? Like, what did I allocate my time to? I want to be able to look back and be like, I tried everything, even if it did fail, right? Even if it doesn't get to where I want, at least I gave my full effort, at least I tried, and at least I know when I reflect back, I allocated my time to things that I wanted to do. Yep. So with that being said, I just resonate with that so heavily because it held me back for so long, and I respect how heavily that you decided to do this anyways. You were vocal with him that you wanted to do this anyways, regardless of those fears. So thank you so much.
Well, let me tell you how it's going.
Yeah.
She's not failing. She's down here. She's on her own. She's making her own way. Yeah. We're very, very proud of where she is, and couldn't be more excited to see what the next year brings for her.
Yeah. I saw some very recent success that you've had at, was it with Richard?
It was.
It was with Richard,
yes,
right?
It was in Newport.
I remember seeing that. Congrats on that, by
Thank
the way.
you.
That was probably a big breakthrough for you as well.
Thinking
about that.
It was yes, it was very fun.
Very
it was
fun.
great. Yeah, it was a tough It was a tough couple weeks for me, but it was a special moment.
Found your way.
Yeah.
Well, either way, thank you both for being on here. I really appreciate it. I hope you had a
Thank
good
you.
time.
Absolutely.
Right?